I saw a meme that once said, like, once you turn 30, like, you just start picking up running, and, like, that becomes, like, your new, like, identity. And I'm like, it literally happened right when I turned 30. I turned 30, like, last year, and, like, here I am, living the meme. Hey everyone, if you like the Fitness Daily, just know that it's brought to you by Zor Fitness. At Zor Fitness, we offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for athletes and coaches. You can find it all in one place, zorfitness.com.
I feel like it really kills the conversation when, like, you're in the middle of talking and then, like, the countdown recorder comes on. It's like 5, 4, and you're like, oh gosh, now I can't small talk anymore.
I know. I get kind of nervous. I'm like, oh God, what do I say?
All right. Well, today we're just going to talk through a little bit of what your training looks like right now, because we were discussing this briefly, but I feel like you especially have gone through like several different phases of your own personal training, where there's been several different focal points for you over the years, and that's shifted as just like your interests have shifted, and the people you're working with has shifted, and your own career has obviously had a unique route. So we just published a podcast. You were on the what was it called? Move the Needle.
Movement Needle. Oh yeah, I was
the Movement Needle. That'd be hard if we had it. Move the Needle podcast. It was a really interesting interview to hear. Obviously, people who don't know you as well as, I don't know you that great, but I know you a lot. We've been working together for a while, so I have a fairly good understanding of how your brain works. So it was interesting to hear people pick your brain who don't know you that well or aren't talking to you all the time. You do have a very unique career path, and I think it's something that, it'll probably serve you well over the years to just be able to relate to a lot of different people. That's one of the things that has stood out to me is that, it might seem like this really random, wavering career through athletics and fitness, but then, it ends up being where, you look back on it and you're like, you know what, if I didn't have all these random experiences or injuries that happened or different little training side projects that I got into, there'd be a lot of different people that I couldn't relate to nearly as effectively and wouldn't be able to train as effectively either.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There are things that I do in my job now that have that benefit a lot from things that I've done before that don't seem directly correlated, like being a logistics officer in the military or having an engineering background. You wouldn't think oh, that's going to benefit you when you're a college strength coach, and then it's sure as shit it does. I'm always organizing data. I do a lot of the data management. I do a lot of data analysis. I'm good at coding, things that I've learned when I was an engineer and very involved in that world of things, and it's carried over. So it's interesting that it has, and it's served me well. It's just very random and not something I would have anticipated. So it all works out.
Yeah, the project management side of things, it's especially if you're working with a team, you'd mentioned this before, okay, you try to individualize things as best you can, but there's certain times where the reality is you're just going to have to sort of write things for the average, and knowing what that actually is really helpful. So being able to take a group of people and figure out good ways to quantify how they're feeling and to put that to paper and make decisions off of that is not an easy thing to do, and I feel like that's one of the things that would probably help you out.
Yeah, for sure. And then for bigger teams where you are doing things individually and trying to individualize as much as you can, or there's subgroups within the team, right? By positions or specialties or whatever it is. Sometimes it get very tricky, trying to manage all of the different things. But again, that was a big part of my job in the military, was managing a ton of information from a ton of different units. So right, I was aircraft maintenance unit, and then I was overseeing the people who were engine troops and the general mechanics and the electronic warfare people, blah blah blah. So then managing all those subcategories, it's kind of like a team, right? You have a whole team. You then, let's say swim team, then you got the distance people, you got breaststrokers, you got short distance, you got mid distance, you got blah blah blah, and that all just managing all those moving parts.
Yeah, I'm glad the decisions I make at least don't, potentially kill people.
Right, it's low stakes, yeah.
Low stakes relative to that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I know, like, my boss mentions that all the time. He's like, you enter this world, he's like, this is first world problems, especially compared to, like, working, let's say if you're, like, a doctor or in the military, where, like, it's life or death. Here it's like...
Yeah, I mean, obviously people take sport very seriously, but it's typically not life and death,
Right.
Yeah, that's what I always say about, like, I was a wrestler, so I was like, at least in CrossFit, which is like my competitive sport right now, it's like, at least no one's trying to, like, hurt you. Like, it's not MMA, it's like, at least no one's trying to punch you in the face or
you get to gauge like how much you want to hurt
I get
yourself.
To control it. Hurting myself versus someone else hurting me. It's much more enjoyable. All right, so let's take it back. Kind of give us just like a big picture overview. I mean, this obviously, like, people are fairly familiar with you, but just kind of give us a real brief overview of, like, sort of the different training endeavors you went through up to where you're at now.
Yeah. So for those people who don't know, because I get this question a lot, it's like, especially working in athletics, is like, oh, what sport did you play growing up? And it's like, I didn't. Like, I was on the math team, right? I was a mathlete. But I didn't play any sports, so really nothing. I did start, like, doing, like, strength training pretty early on.
You're like, I can tell you what 10 by 10 pull-ups equals.
Yeah. Pull out your calculator. I bet you I could beat it right now. But so, like, I didn't play any sports growing up, which I wish I did, but, it just wasn't something that was accessible to me growing up. And not many people I knew, like, many of my friends were playing sports. Like, it was very foreign. So
which is like the main reason to get into sports is, like, your friends are doing it, or your parents did it and they want you to go into it.
Right, exactly. So and even in high school, I was just like, no, I want to have a path, and this is the path I want to go down. Eventually I started doing strength training pretty early on. One of the main reasons was because I needed to gain weight for the military. So I weighed about, like, 90 pounds or so, and I needed to, for my height, I needed to get at least to 104. That was, and I don't know if it's changed now. The standards,
that's like 15% of your body weight. I mean, that would be like for, like, if you're like 200 pounds, it's 30 pounds. It's a lot of weight.
Exactly. So by that time, when I got there, like, in college, and they told me that, like, they were like, hey, like, you're passing the test, you're fine, blah, blah. Like, I could crank out a ton of push-ups, pull-ups, everything relative body weight, like, bam. I weighed 90 pounds. But yeah, so I was like, okay, there's a good way to do this and a bad way to do this. So I'm going to just strength train a lot more, try to put on some mass there. By the end of that year, I weighed like 125. So I put on quite a bit of weight pretty quick. And honestly, I just ate more. I was more, like, aware of what I ate, and I lifted very heavy, like, and that's where, like, I started doing bodybuilding a lot more. So that's where I found, like, that love for that approach of training. And I did that for most of college and after college. Very standard, like, resistance training, like bodybuilding style. And I've gone through all of it, right? Like, I've gone through, like, the bro split. I've gone through, like, full body, all that stuff. So that's always been fun. But that's always been, like, my favorite style of training, I would say. Like, even now, I would still say that's, like, my favorite style.
It's funny because, like, I growing up in, high school, our high school actually had, like, a really nice weight room and stuff, and, like, the football team, like, always was training. So it's like, we had, like, really nice facilities, and I had at least enough, like, decent enough coaching where I got some, like, good exposure on, like, like, more like powerlifting, some bodybuilding, like, kind of just, like, basic strength conditioning that had, like, more of an influence of, like, 80s style bodybuilding into it.
Yeah.
And then it was like that kind of training was, like, always and still is very enjoyable. Like, you get to lift heavy, you also get a sick pump, like, some arm farm in there. It's like, it's very fun. And maybe that's just me saying it's fun because it's like that was what it's like nostalgic, but I also think it's inherently pretty enjoyable because it's like you feel good when you've gone through that workout. Not that you don't feel good when you get done with like, 45-minute bike ride or something, right? But it's just different.
Yeah, I agree. It's very different. Another thing I really liked about it was like when life gets crazy, school, work, or whatever, there's always a way to kind of work around that. Like if I had to travel, like I don't have to worry about like the logistics of things. Like I know I could just drop into any gym and they're gonna have dumbbells and like cable machines and bam, I'm good.
That's one of the things that like, if depending what type of training you're doing, like if you were like all in on the endurance side of things, like you don't want to go and ride a stationary bike. Like you want your bike, right? Or like, I mean, obviously like pools are standardized. Other things like are standardized, but it's like, especially for CrossFit. CrossFit's like the most extreme example. It's like you're going to need, or even strongman would probably be a very good example where like you need specialty equipment. If the layout's not right, it's going to screw everything up. And it makes travel very stressful. And so like, no, that's very true. Like having something that's so simple that bodybuilding can be, it makes it where it's very accessible for you kind of throughout your life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I did that for quite a bit of time. I actually did like 2 bodybuilding shows. So that was fun. That was an interesting experience. I wouldn't do one again, but it was definitely like experience I'm glad I did.
What was do you have any like good stories from that? I feel like you have to.
Yeah, so when I was living in New York City at the time is when I was like super into it, where it was like, I've been doing like bodybuilding style training at that point for like 5-6 years. And so I'm living in New York City and I live in the Bronx, right? And so I have this apartment in the Bronx, this little studio apartment, and like literally down the street, there's like this little hole in the wall gym. And I walked by it one time and I'm like, this seems kind of cool. It's like a little hole in the wall, like, and I was going out to LA Fitness at that time. And I'm like, I'm going to drop in and check it out. So I drop in and there's this dude and I love him to death. His name's Big KD. So I talked to Big KD and I still keep in contact with him to this day because like I love the guy. And he's like, yeah, you come, it's a small space crowded with machines and all that. And there's like a few people working out and he's just telling them what to do. He's like, yeah, when you come in, you do my workout and I tell you what to do. And essentially you're doing like 5 sets of 15 on everything. And then, and he's like, he tells you what to do. He had a little corner where you could do like protein shakes and all that stuff. And it was very like homey. Like it felt like, a very comfortable spot. And he was like, yeah, so, if you want to do it, and then, like, you can compete if you want, and I could, like, help guide you through that. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I would go every day, and I loved it. It was, like, the best. I was living in New York City. My job was easy. Like, my hours weren't crazy. I would go there every day and train. It was a good small community. And honestly, I was probably the only, like, white girl there. And it was, like, the greatest thing. They just, like, took me in. And I'm like, I love it here. And it was awesome. And, like, yeah. So it was during that year that I was like, okay, like, I'll do 2 shows. And he kind of, like, guided me through that. Because, I didn't know anything about, like, what type of... Because, it's... you have to get a bikini for it. You have to get all tanned up. Like, you have to... all this and stuff. Like, I didn't know any of that. So they helped me throughout that whole process. So, yeah. And then eventually I left New York City, sadly. And that was sad. So I left New York City to come to Arizona. And that's where I was like, okay, I'm just going to now kind of transition a little bit to powerlifting. And I did that, which was actually perfect for when I deployed because I got to Arizona and then like 6 months later I deployed. Because when I deployed out there, it's like there was a small tent with like rusty barbells, like old plates, and really not much else. And so it was like perfect setup for powerlifting. Like you do some accessory work with like the crappy dumbbells and whatever. So I did powerlifting and all that for about a year
all the bars don't spin.
Yeah, all the bars are like rusty. Yeah. And so I did that for about 1.5 years, 2 years or so. I did like 1 meet, and I was very average. It's not like I was good or anything. Yeah, and I was just like, okay, now on to the next thing. That's CrossFit. And I think one reason was because I was losing a lot of my fitness. I was getting stronger, and for like my size and weight and all that, I was pretty strong. Like my squat was never good, but bench was decent, deadlifts were decent. But when it came to one of my annual tests that we have for the Air Force, usually I was able to max out. So I was able to do like the 1.5 mile run. The max out time was you have to run at least like a 7-minute mile for females, for 1.5 miles. So nothing crazy. And I was always not easily, but I was always able to pass that like without concern. When I did the powerlifting, that's where it was like I ran the 1.5 miles in like, I think it was like an 11:20, and I was gassed, like fighting for my life, because I was like, I swear, like this is crazy. So I was like, all right, I need to do something with a little bit more fitness. Enter CrossFit.
And so how did you actually find it? Because I don't know the story.
The CrossFit?
Yeah. Were other people in the military doing it, or how'd you figure that out?
I had one friend in the military who was doing it when I was deployed, and she was very into that. She was a helicopter pilot, and they all like the helicopter pilots, like, and a lot of the PJs, like the special forces guys, like they do a lot of CrossFit. So I would see them do CrossFit because, backtrack a little bit, that little tent that I told you when I was deployed, they actually upgraded it like 3 months into my deployment, and we got a bigger tent with like all new equipment. And I think it was because like some commander was like, well, if we have special forces and rescue people out there, they need to be fit and in shape. Like they're going to be there for long extended periods of time. So he like put in a budget where it's like, hey, let's upgrade this. So we got a big tent, like this pretty like good structure. Like it wasn't going to get blown away. And there was like, it was super tall. Like we were able to hang ropes from the ceilings, like had everything, like a bunch of bikes. I don't think you have. I could check if I have pictures. Maybe on like I may have.
I feel like I've seen a similar type setup. Maybe it was like one of my military clients. I forget, but yeah, I remember seeing like a big white tent with like gym equipment in it.
Yeah, and it was a ton of gym equipment, and it was awesome. Like, so they upgraded that towards the end of my deployment, and I would see, that's where I would see like all the spec ops guys and the pilots like doing their little CrossFit stuff, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, like the Olympic weightlifting and all that. So I was like, okay, so that kind of just like sat in my head for a little bit. And then I started reading a lot more about it, like on my spare time when I got back to the States. Started reading a lot more and just kind of like doing a lot of research and listened to a lot of podcasts and figuring out how programming works for CrossFit, programming for myself, looking at templates, like whatever here and there. That's where I came across the fitness movement, and then just started learning about that. Worked with you for, what was that, 2 years, 2 to 3 years,
something like that.
Yeah. And that was really fun. But then, as we were talking about before, logistics always becomes like the big limiter when like I'm like, I go on TDYs or something like that for the military, and it's like I'm moving here, I have to go visit my family for 2 weeks in Massachusetts, so I'm traveling over there. And so that got kind of difficult for me with like a bunch of life changes and moving back and forth and traveling. So I went back to like general training, kind of like bodybuilding style and all that, and then picked up a little bit more running. And that's I think that's where I'm at right now. I think I've caught up. My long story.
I feel like you're doing a little bit more than a little bit of running right now.
Yeah. It's definitely like my primary focus right now, I would say. Like I spend more of my time running, which is weird.
So did you do like any running when you were like in like back, let's even go back before like New York. Did you do any like running back then?
Yeah, not in New York, because that was bodybuilding days, so that was Stairmaster.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I had the good old Stairmaster for like the longest times I would go there. I would spend on the Stairmaster, but in college I did a lot more running. And it wasn't like a ton, right? But it was a lot more than what I did during, once I left college. Like toned it down quite a bit. And, you know, one of the reasons was, like, I was living in Boston, so there's a lot of nice areas to run around in Boston. I was in school, so, you know, you had time and you had a good location to do that.
Yeah.
So that was good. And another reason was, too, like, the ROTC unit I was in, everyone was pretty fit, and, like, we did a lot of running in our, like, you know, physical training sessions, and that was actually really good because it forced me to, like, kind of keep up, because, like, naturally I'm not a great runner. So, and we had some really good runners in there. So it's kind of like, you know, keep up or get plowed over. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like recently this kind of flipped around where, like, the running has become more of a priority, and then the lifting is more supporting the running.
Yeah.
And, like, maintenance. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. That's where it's at right now, which is interesting because, like, lifting has never been, like, the second priority for me. That's always been focus. Even when I was doing all other stuff, like, I always had the focus on lifting. But yeah, now it's flopped for the first time, and it's kind of been, I think I saw a meme that once said, like, once you turn 30, like, you just start picking up running, and, like, that becomes, like, your new, like, identity. And I'm like, it literally happened right when I turned 30. I turned 30, like, last year, and, like, here I am, living the meme.
Oh my gosh. There's so many good endurance athletes who are, like, in their 30s and 40s. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
more like traditional sports that require more, like, explosiveness, or just, like, obviously, like, the age for that is, and part of that's just, like, the school system. Yeah, obviously it encourages people to peak early, like, college, just out of college, if they're, you know, NFL or, you know, NBA, things like that. But yeah, during sports you can kind of push that a lot later, which is interesting. But
right, and, like,
so you're just getting into it at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, with endurance sports too, it's like a lot of times to get better is, like, through load, and that comes with time, because there's only so much you can run, right? Where, like, power and explosiveness, like, we know, like, that deteriorates a lot quicker. So, like, by the time someone's in their late 20s, they're, like, an ancient athlete if they're, like, a gymnast or whatever.
You are so old if you are a weightlifter and you're 25.
Yeah, it's like
25.
Yeah,
time to retire, dude.
Like, bro, you're not going to move as fast anymore. Like, just give it up. Start running.
Yep. But do you have any, like, races or events or big goals for yourself, or are you just kind of training?
Right now, I'm just kind of training. I do want to do another half and finally do a full. And I'm looking at doing, like, another half anticipated, like, within the fall, and then probably a full within the next spring. And I wanted to do a half, it was in this winter, but it also gets kind of tricky because, like, just, you know, life and all that sometimes happens. And also with me, like, I'll have, like, some medical stuff that, you know, doesn't allow me to do that, and it requires me to pull back a little bit. So it's like, okay, like, I'm on a good trajectory, and then there's a turn, and it's like, oh, well, I got to pull back and kind of reassess and make sure I don't, you know, hurt myself or whatever. And then, but right now it looks like fall would be ideal for the half, and then a full in the following spring. Yeah,
but either way, like, having at least a rough trajectory of kind of where you would like things to go gives you, you know, some basis for what your training should look like, or, like, how you want to progress yourself optimally, even if that gets interrupted sometimes. So yeah, take us through a week right now. Like, what does training typically look like for you?
Yeah, so right now I'll do, like, 4 days of strength training, with one day being, like, very easy. So, like, the strength training part of it, I usually do, like a lower upper split. I think works well for me. I like it. I know full body is usually what I would recommend someone to do if they're doing running, just so they're not, like, running on sore legs. But I like the lower upper split for me personally, so I just stuck with that. So 4 days, with one day being kind of like a very low volume. It's like I'm just basically doing, like, goblet squats, dumbbell RDLs, and, like, a hamstring curl, and that's it. But yeah, so there's that. running wise, I'm running about 5 times a week. So
wow.
5 times a week, yeah. And then usually I'll have like, depending on the, like, I would say 5 to 6 times. And it really depends on what the total time and mileage is that I'm putting on. And let's say if I'm doing like a 6 times a week for like aerobic training, about 1 to 2 of those times is going to be on like on a bike or some type of cross training. So I've been incorporating that a little bit more. So essentially like in a full week, it's either 5 to 6 times total days of aerobic training with 1 or 2 cross training cycling days. So, and each day, you know, there's a different focus. So right now, because I'm so far out, I'm just building a foundation. And I'm doing more like longer distances, just building volume appropriately, taking small jumps, all that, assessing how I feel. But yeah.
Are you worried about pace at all, or are you just kind of running on those days?
I am. So I've been worried, like not worried, I've been focusing on it more just because I've gone, the past like 2 months, I've been doing, I would say about 2 months. I would say it was like 8 weeks. I've been doing a lot more with just like not pacing and just, you know, and I kind of throttled back a bit and like started doing things like I would do Stairmaster or whatever. And I was like kind of, because I've been running for a bit, so I just wanted to take a little break for like, you know, mechanically and all that stuff and just, you know, give my body a little break from all that impact. So I was like, okay, I'll just do a lot of time on like, you know, I'll do some running, slow running based on just how I feel. Some Stairmaster stuff, some biking, you know, hiking, all that stuff. Now that I'm doing a little bit more structure, now I want to look a little bit more at pacing just to get a baseline and just kind of, you know, progress appropriately and see like some days when I hold a certain pace that should be or usually is very easy, my perceived exertion is higher than expected and my heart rate is too. So it's like, okay, so I'm kind of getting a feel for like how long can I sustain like certain paces from week to week. So I like to look at paces just so I can, when I get closer to that desired race date, I know what I should be hitting and how long I could last.
Yeah, it's like as soon as you have like a date on the calendar, then paces and even mileage becomes more important. Like just like managing all that becomes, you have to get a little more streamlined with everything and a little bit more precise versus just like you can be a little more laissez-faire, like relaxed about your training when it like if you are just trying to be generally healthy, fit, and like have more, you know, generalized goals around like in this case running.
Right. Yeah, like
so if you go out and like you feel like crap on like a run and like your exertion level's like way elevated for paces relative to what it normally is, like what do you do?
I take two routes.
Suck it up, Day. Run harder.
Yeah, suck it up. You're soft.
Shut up, legs.
Yeah. I tell myself I'm soft and I just keep going. No, you know, it depends. Like some days I do grind through it. So I'm not going to say like I don't. So some days are just going to feel harder and I just kind of grind through it.
I don't think that's bad. Like, that's life of training. Like, there's days where you don't feel as good. Like, tough shit. Like,
right.
You have to get to work.
Exactly. Like, some days are just going to feel like crap. So, right. And I do have to tell myself that. And then I put a David Goggins video on and everything's good. So, but yeah. So I either suck it up and just go through it, which can be good or bad, you know, whatever. Other days if I'm feeling like tired, like I've just been like, for example, today, I just like woke up and I was like exhausted. Like, you know, I'm driving and I'm like, I could fall asleep right now. Like if I feel like that, that's where I'll throttle things back and I'll be like, maybe I'll just do a bike ride today and just listen to my body. Versus like last week I was tired because I was moving into my new house and, you know, I had scheduled like a long run at a certain pace, followed like, so it was a long run for 50 minutes and then the last 30 minutes of that run. So 50 minutes easy, 30 minutes tempo. So, you know, 80 minutes total. in that tempo run, I was like, I don't know if I could sustain that pace, like, especially after 50 minutes of long. Like, I'm so tired. I've been moving, blah, blah, blah. But I just kind of, that one was one where I was just like, just suck it up. Like, you're fine. You're just, like, mentally fatigued. You're not physically fatigued.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
it really
that's
depends.
It's just tough when you're doing it, like, when you're leading yourself through your training. Like,
It is.
That's, like, the hard calls to make is, like, when do you pull back and when do you choose to push through it?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, like, it's tough because, like, I've gone to points where, like, I've pushed through it and I've injured myself, right? But then,
where you just, like, spiral your fatigue, where then you feel even worse, like, the next 2-3 days because you, like, push yourself too hard.
You can really dig yourself into a hole. But then at the same time, like, if you don't push yourself to those limits, like, you're also not, like, pushing those, like, barriers forward and, like, increasing your capacity.
If you never do that, that's not a good sign. Yeah, I guess that'd be, like, a good way to, like, see if it's, like, a real problem is, like, if you feel like trash and you never modify, it's probably not a great system, right? If you feel like trash sometimes and you never push through it, you're probably a little soft.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Everything in the middle is like that gray area of like, okay, like sometimes you're gonna have to figure it out. Right. And that's like a challenging process, but yeah, if you default all the time to something, that's probably not great.
Yeah, I agree.
I have athletes, and it's like every time if I give them 5 to 7 sets, they're gonna do 7 sets.
Yeah,
Like it was never a decision if they're gonna do 5 or 6 or 7. It was always gonna be 7 from the second they saw the programming. Like I don't always have those type of athletes, but when I do, it like becomes really obvious. Like, okay, you're gonna do the maximal amount that I allow you to do every single time.
Yeah, and I think I'm assuming it's like most CrossFit athletes are like that, right? Like.
Yeah,
athletes that like
but
volume.
Also like you talked about this with like the triathletes you work with, like they're the same, they're wired the same way where it's like unless you keep them on a leash, they're just gonna run.
Right. Yeah. And I think like growing up, especially like where bodybuilding is volume, like more volume you get, a lot of times more results you get. It's very volume intensive, so like I grew up in the like thinking that was great, and I love that. So every time I did something, I wanted like volume, and that was one thing that put me off a little bit from powerlifting, where it's like you need to be smart, and your like programming approach, like going heavy every day is not gonna work. Like there is a calculated approach to this, and like I want to max out bench every day. I want to fucking max out my deadlift every day, and I'm like, I didn't want to do like a set of 3 at a lower percentage or RPE 6, like RPE 9 or 10 or nothing. No, but so that's like it was interesting, it was new to me, so I'm like, okay, and I started learning about that, and then CrossFit was one where it's like I could easily fall in the hole CrossFit because it's like there's so much to do. So it's like, why not do it all? And especially with someone like me where I can't recover that fast. Like I wish I could, but I can't. Very easy for me to fall into that trap.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. But it is also true where like you see the best athletes in those disciplines and they are able to just handle that much.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like reasons like drugs or whatever, but like even like beyond that, like there's some people who just like move really well. Their joints are, the correct amount of range of motion for the thing that they're doing. Like, you see people and they're built for triathlon, they look a certain way. And part of that's because of the nurture aspect, right? Where it's like, okay, you've been doing this for years and years and you've all this repetitive, volume build up. So like your body like morphs. So you're best suited for that. But then there's also like the other side of it where it's like some people are just built differently for their thing and they've selected to do the correct thing for how they're built. And it's just like watching a fish swim and you're like, wow, this is sweet. But then not everybody's like that. So it's like you have to also like, especially in like our job as coaches, is like you have to figure out like, this is a super talented fish who's getting measured at how to climb a tree as best it can.
That's actually really good I like that. I think, yeah. And it, like, right, it's like sometimes I think of it and I'm like, oh man, like I see people who are able to, you know, lift a ton of weight, like 2-3 times their body weight, that or 3 times their body weight and all that. And it's like I wish I could do that, but it's like naturally I've noticed that like if I were to just live my life naturally and like not pay attention to like what I'm eating and just eat based on like, you know, how I feel and all that, I go back to weighing 90 pounds. I've come to realize like I would go back to high school day, and it's like I have to really be conscious to like, you know, calculated with my decisions to get like what I can out of it. Naturally, out of everything I've done though, it's been interesting that bodybuilding's probably like what I've been best at. It's like I'm naturally very small, but I can put on muscle for my frame.
Yeah, and you'll be lean and muscular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I could do that pretty well. That was probably like the discipline I was like most, you know, naturally good at. Yeah.
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 So, do you have anything like fun that you're experimenting with right now in your training? Like, obviously, like you could just go about your training and be like, keep the programming and maybe you do, but keep the programming like very boring. It's like, you know, everything's linear, whatever. But then there's also probably things that because you're working with like professionals, university teams, people who are at like the tip of the spear, is there anything that's like you're playing with that like you're excited about that you've like been experimenting on yourself with your training?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. One is, you know, in the like in college sports, like technology has been a big thing, right? So I've been exposed to a lot of technology that, you know, I haven't been exposed to before. So I've been using a lot more like velocity-based trainers because I think it's good for like, it's useful.
Oh, I saw that on Instagram that you had that. I was like,
Yeah, and it's fun. So I like bought one of them. There's this company called OVR, because they're pretty like any other company, like so they're pretty pricey.
At least, right?
Yeah, and it's like they're expecting you to buy for like a team, right? Like in bulk. Where like OVR is like meant for you to buy like, you know, like single units for yourself.
Yeah.
So I have one and it's pretty cool. Like, and I started using it just because like, okay, like I'm getting tired from running and doing all this stuff or whatever. So by the time I'm lifting, I'm a bit fatigued. So I can't expect myself to follow, or I don't expect that it's going to be a straight like linear progression. It's good. There's going to be a lot of like variables now, right? So I used velocity-based trainers to stay within a velocity bracket and hit the weights that I want to hit. So like the intensity at least. So some weeks I'm able to hit within, you know, a certain velocity range. I'm able to hit a weight exactly where I want it to be. Other weeks I'll do a similar weight and it's moving really slow. So it's like, okay, I'm going to have to drop some weight to meet the intent that I have. So I've been using that a lot, and I use it for like my main movements. Like I do it for a bench, I do it for a squat, I do it for a deadlift. So I've been using that. And then another thing too that I've been really into, just because it's part of like the research that I've been doing in school with the immunobiology. The professor I work for, he does like a ton of case studies on himself. He's an interesting guy. So he does case studies on himself where he's like, oh, I'm going to, you know, do this, you know, I'm going to do a VO2 max test and I'm going to, you know, add these variables in it. And within 2 weeks, I'm going to test myself again and see where it's at. So, and he does it all on himself. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to do that. So I've been doing, looking at my immune system, like cell counts, when I'm not training as much. So I do it during a deload week. I take like blood samples to see that. And then I'm looking at my immune system cell counts when I'm like kind of verging on like overtraining, like my high training weeks. And I purposely make it so I'm like tiptoeing that line of like overtraining. And then get my like immune cell counts there. So then I could see like, okay, like, is there a change in the immune system when someone is training normally or under training, like deloady week, when there's not that chronic stress versus when there is chronic stress involved. So that's something I've been doing as well, which isn't necessarily for performance, more just like for my own like curiosity on that field.
So I've been doing the velocity-based training for performance, and then also doing the some immunobiology work. Now that that is the lab that I work in for my PhD, so naturally I'm more curious about it. So what I've been doing is, or what I've been writing up a case study to do on myself, but plan to do a bike ride during a deload week, also during a week where I don't have a lot of workload in school and at work, so that I have low stress levels. So low stress levels, deload week, so there's not a lot of physical stress as well. Do a bike protocol and get blood samples from that to get immune cell response. So doing that, and then in about 4 weeks or so, do the same thing with the bike graded protocol, but do it under high stress. So I'm going to, increase training throughout those 4 weeks so that it's pretty much, I'll be tiptoeing that line of like overtraining and having very, very high loads. So I'll be under a lot of physical stress. So a lot of physical stress, and get blood samples from that bike protocol and see how that feels. But also, get like subjective data from that, which we all know what that's going to look like, but also look at how chronic stress impacts acute stress. So that's in the immune cell response. So although that's not like performance-based per se, it's something I am doing in my training and something that I'm looking forward to doing because it does sound fun. So yeah, that's basically all I got.
Yeah, very cool. Man, I feel like we could talk about that for a long time. So we'll probably put a pin in it.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and maybe revisit a deeper conversation about either velocity-based training or the immune responses to training. But yeah, let's leave it there and we'll revisit. Danny, thanks for doing this today.
Yeah.